Hey everyone, and welcome to Bassman Studio. I'm Charles Bassman, and in this episode of Bassman Studio, I'm going to copy a famous painting that's hanging at the Met, Emanuel Lutz's Washington Crossing the Delaware. It's a very large painting. Obviously, I'm not going to paint it to scale, but I will do a fairly good-sized version of it, which took a few days, about 4 or 5 days to complete. It's a very complex painting. It's very beautiful. I encourage you to go see it. It's always surrounded by tourists at the Met for good reason. It's just an amazing painting. Been restored recently as well. The frame itself is a work of art and quite beautiful. So it's worth seeing not only for the beautiful painting, but the beautiful frame as well. So sit back and relax and enjoy this new video from Bassman Studio. And here's our painting. As you can see, composition is very complex. And we're going to start off with raw umber, which is an earth color. And I'm going to use this for the under drawing, or we call the under painting. And usually I start off with the horizon line. It's what separates land with sky. And that way I can determine where I want to put figures and any other details that I will put in later. And you can see I'm working left to right or right to left, but trying to keep like a very open composition with no detail, just putting in the large shapes in the beginning with a round brush. So something that I could use that has a sharp point. So it's almost like using a pencil. Some artists actually do underpaintings or under drawings rather in charcoal, but I prefer just going alla prima and just using paint. And earth colors dry very quickly. So something like raw umber, burnt sienna, or burnt umber are all going to dry fairly quickly. So they're great for to use as underpaintings. And you can see there's not much to it. It almost looks abstract in the beginning, but once I keep going and I keep drawing, I can add figures in. This composition is very complicated. There are many figures doing different things. So just trying to determine where to put everything. And it doesn't look like much yet. Again, it looks very abstract, and there's no, you can't really tell if there are people there, etc. But little by little, it'll start to look like a composition, a finished composition. Now, of course, Emanuel Lutz's painting is on a massive scale, so the underdrawing for that painting must have taken, forever to do. Very complicated. Just working out the composition. Artists, to create such a complex composition would have to do many studies for it before you could actually start a final painting. So you can see I have basically the composition almost done, and now I'm just adding the shadows. Again, very simply in raw umber in the earth color. And little by little I will establish the composition a little bit more in detail, but I will not be adding color until that composition is established and all the shadows are where they should be. So you never really want to rush into color, of course. You just want to take your time. And just adding a few shadows, just so that I know where the light source is coming from. A great way to look at it is if you're doing a painting, just pretend that you're going to give this painting, underpainting, or underdrawing to someone else to paint. So you need to put as much information as possible so that when you actually add color, you know where to put the color. And again, this particular painting takes a very long time to do the composition because there's just so much going on. And not only that, but you have to actually determine how far one figure is from another figure. So you have to be careful with your drawing. And of course, there's proportion that you have to consider as well. So if you do want to try copying this painting, it's quite complex. It's a challenge. Not the easiest painting to copy, but certainly very fun to paint. And for those of you who don't know, the Metropolitan Museum does have a copyist program, which I've done a few times, where they allow you to copy paintings in oil. And you can ask to copy this painting right there at the Met. Not sure if they'll allow you. Sometimes they do not allow certain paintings to be copied, but worth a try if you want to venture to the Met and work on the painting in person. So you can see I'm going around, adding shadows little by little, trying to complete a finished underpainting, which shows the light, which shows the direction and the volume of volume. By volume, I mean the three-dimensionality of the figures in this raw umber stage. So you see I have the shadows pretty much worked out, very sketchy, but as long as I know where to put all the color, then everything is okay. And now I can start adding the color. And you can see there's a lot of color, a lot of tones and values in this painting. And I'm going to start with the first color I want to use. And I usually start with the background first. So I'm starting with the yellowish toned background behind Washington. And again, keeping it really, really simple. And little by little, I'll add layers to make it give it more of a glowing effect, basically. But this is the beginning. What we call the blocking in of a painting, where you're just like adding color in broad areas. And you can see I'm just like adding color where it should be added. Not worrying too much about blending at this point. I am blending a little bit, but not to the extent. And now I'm just mixing some color for the top part of the sky. Some beautiful cobalt blue, a little yellow and a little black. And now I could add the top part of the sky, which is a little bit darker than the horizon line part of the sky. And again, just keeping it really, really sketchy, very loose. Using a fairly big brush, not too big, but just to get enough area covered in the painting. And by working back to forward, you start pushing the foreground toward you, which is a great way to work. And now I'm just adding some of the distant blue color using this beautiful cobalt blue. I actually love using cobalt blue. I think it's one of the most beautiful blues to use. I'm not entirely sure what Emmanuel Lut's palette was, but this is usually what I use for skies. He probably did not use cobalt blue. Cobalt blue was invented a bit later than the actual when the actual painting was painted. So you can see while the paint is still wet, I could blend slightly. One of the beauties of oil, you could keep moving it around because it takes a little longer to dry. And just blending a little bit, not too much. Because the bottom part of the painting has this like bluish kind of haze. Very slight. And now just adding a bit of a darker blue to the land mass, which is in the background. So here's a tip. I always encourage my students to carry around a sketchbook because you just never know when ideas are going to hit you, or you're just going to get an idea while walking or having coffee like me. So I always carry around like a small sketchbook. This is a Moleskine, which I love these sketchbooks, but it could be any sketchbook of any size because you just never know when inspiration is going to hit you. And you could see some of these ideas I actually created into paintings. Some have never become paintings. So, but a lot of ideas, not just for art, for at least in my case, for teaching, anything. So I love using a fountain pen. You can see this is all pen and ink and different colored ink. So I encourage you to carry around the sketchbook. It's just a great idea. It's always good to have something with you to draw with. Of course, it doesn't have to be pen and ink. It could be any medium, any size you wish. But as you can see, there's a lot of sketches in here. And sometimes I look back and I get an idea for a painting I've never completed or never started from months ago. So just a great thing to do. And now I'm just adding some of more of the background in this grayish blue color, and still working on the background. As you can see, this particular painting takes a very long time to cover all the areas, right? And even in this small scale, the painting is still very complex. So it gives you an idea of how complex it must have been for Emanuel Lutz to paint such a large scale painting. How long it must have taken him to do it. How much labor that involves. It's really admirable. And you can see now I'm just blending a little bit in the sky. Because again, one of the beauties of oil is that it remains wet. It doesn't dry quickly. So you could keep blending and you could keep moving paint around, basically. And it's quite enjoyable to paint loosely a vast open sky like this. And now I could actually start painting color on the figures. And I started with Washington, some of the red in his uniform, some of the skin tones of various people. And you can see there's a variety of colors. Some, of course, have dulled over the years, but now I'm going to add colors on the American flag. And I'm using this kind of pale, almost like a flesh tone kind of like color, which I see in the painting. And of course the blue part of the flag as well, which is darker than the background. And again, keeping it very loose. As you can see, there's no detail yet. That will come much later. And of course, some of the beautiful reddish colors and the stripes. And I'm still using the same brush. I usually keep using the same brush for block in. And now just blending a little bit behind the flag in very rich kind of impasto paint. And just to make it pop out. Because in the painting it actually stands out from the background. Background is much lighter. Now I could add the bluish dark color of George Washington's uniform. Again, keeping it very loose. In the beginning, it's going to look very cartoony, which is fine. Any details can be added later. And I could still use the same blue in some other figures as well. And now working on the figure at the lower part of the painting. And it's just a very darkish bluish color. And again, it's not going to look like a person really at this point. And now I could add some of the shadows on the boat. And what that's going to do is it's going to pop out basically the icebergs that are in front because of contrast. Because that's what we want. We want contrast. We want something to come forward and something to push back. Basically what painting is. And this beautiful, rich, brownish color that I mixed. And now the water, which is this greenish color. In the painting itself, it's a variety of colors, but I found that it's closer to this greenish tone in the painting. So I'm just going to do this as an underpainting, and if I wish to add a more variety of colors, I can do that later. But in this blocking in stage, I just used this greenish red color. And I try to cover as much as I can. Again, pulling the icebergs out, because you can see it's actually helping pull them forward. And I just go around and I block in. And now painting the figure on the far right, which is a bit of a greenish, like an army green color to what he's wearing. So I just deepen the green. And just darkening the sky a little bit. Again, keeping it very loose. And you can see it turns a little blue toward the end, so toward the bottom, which of course I'll add as well. But there is a little blue toward the bottom right of the painting, toward the horizon line. And now just putting a few more details in George Washington's uniform. And you can see it's kind of like there's a lot of gold colored areas as well. And just working my way around, trying to determine where to put each color. And just changing the colors a little bit, making it a little bit more yellow on the yellowish side. Again, making it a bit more on the gold side, which I see in the painting actually. Again, if you haven't seen this painting, I highly recommend it. The figures are life-size, basically, apparently almost life-size, so it's quite startling. And here I am just painting details of George Washington's hat. And now I'm just adding a few more shadows on the features. So things are going to be pulled out more than they were before. And now I'm using a smaller round brush to do this. And here I'm using a small round brush to go do the work on the background. Backgrounds are extremely important. They are going to either help or hurt the figure in front. So they are very important. You want to make sure that you have the right background, the right color, etc. And just be very careful with the contours, like going around the figure. And just making it a little bit brighter and fixing the contours or the sharp areas. Just adding a bit of crimson red to General Washington's uniform, making it a very dark color, just to pull it out. So little by little, it starts to come together. Of course, it takes a while, depending on how far you want to go. I'm going to keep this copy pretty sketchy, so I'm not going to go too far, but just to get the general idea. And here I'm adding the shadows on the iceberg. pull them out, which is really fun to do. So you can see little by little it starts to come together. And just adding some shadows on the water. And just going to add some shadows on the figure on the extreme left of the painting. And that's going to pull him forward as well. Remember, it's about contrast. And when painting something, you want to say, well, how much darker is the figure or the object than the background? Is it much darker than the background, or is it just as dark as the background? So you want to ask yourself all these questions. It's about pulling something forward or pushing something back. In this case, the figure on the extreme left is darker than the background, or much darker than the background. So he pulls forward more, and the colors are darker. That goes for all the figures, actually. And here I'm adding the shadows and this really rich reddish color to the figure right next to Washington, as you can see, who's holding onto the boat. And again, keeping it really sketchy. So as long as I cover as much area as I can at this point, which is my goal, just to cover as much area as I can. And I will worry about details later. And just sharpening edges. And now working on the figure right above the figure right next to Washington. And again, these are, you could see the underdrawing, and I'm trying to cover it. So again, with like just very, very loose brush strokes, putting in some skin tone color, and almost like impasto paint. I love doing the underpainting impasto, alla prima. So now we're going to work on a few more things before we get into like small things. So we're just going to add some more color to a few figures, because I don't like to leave too much unpainted surface before I add detail. It's good to kind of just go around and cover as much as you can. Try not to leave any of the white canvas showing. It's a good idea. Like some of it will show, but the goal is to try to cover everything, basically, in paint. What we call blocking in, again. You just want to cover as much as you can. So you could go back and not worry about detail too much. And just going back to the American flag, and just covering as much as I can, so that I could go back and I could use a smaller brush for the small things. It's very tempting to go into detail. Try to not give into the temptation and try to keep it really, really loose. You'll know when the time is right. With practice, you'll know when to put detail, but you never want to rush it. This is a very crucial part. You want to make sure this part works. And again, just working on the sky. And if you see the painting in person, there's a lot of layers to the sky. It's so beautiful. And just blending a little bit more. So I'm just going over literally what I painted before and just making it a little brighter. The yellow underpainting will help make it lighter as well. And just literally just pushing canvas onto the, pushing paint rather onto the canvas. And I'm barely touching the canvas. I'm trying to keep it very soft. Because the background is very soft. The sky is very subtle. It's very dramatic and very powerful, but subtle. So here I have pretty much my underpainting, my blocking in is complete. And now I could go back and I could start adding smaller things to the painting. And here I have a really, really nice brown brush, very thin. And I could use that for any small details like the oar, the shadows on the oar, and just delineating like sharp areas. And I could even go into facial features and hair. And I could darken areas like one of the figure's hair, which is darker by contrast. I could use the same brush and I could use that to sharpen outlines around the face. And I love painting hair. It's like just really fun to paint. So with a nice round brush, you could actually paint strands of hair. And even here, I could use the same brush to show shadow on the man's jacket. And push him a little bit forward, basically. It's making it stronger, more three-dimensional. And you can see it's starting to push forward. And again, any features, it's going to look a little cartoony in the beginning, but as long as I could add where eyes, nose, and mouth are on the figure, I could go back and work in detail. But this brush is wonderful for details like that. It's just literally a nice small round brush. And again, any facial features, eye sockets, etc. can be done with this brush. So you can see like I'm working on that figure and the light's coming from above. So the shadow is going to be underneath his nose and you can see below his brow. And now I could go back and continue with detail on some facial features. Now, of course, I'm going to keep it really sketchy, so I'm not going to get too much into detail with facial features. As long as I get my point across is what concerns me. So it's almost like I'm redrawing my painting. And I can work on details on Washington's uniform, the shadows on him, on his figure, just to pull him out more. Once you know the block in is good, you could do all these beautiful details, and it's one of the most fun things to do in art, for me at least. And just sharpening areas. I really do recommend getting a very good sharp round brush for this. They may cost you a little bit more money, but it's worth it. Just good to have really good materials. And good brushes retain their shape, so keep that in mind. Same brush. Notice I have not changed the brush. This is the same round brush, and I'm doing the stripes on the flag. Just some details to push it out more, to give it more power. And I'm just pushing in the paint on the canvas. And with this beautiful, rich, reddish, deep reddish color. And even shadows and facial features on a few figures that I've neglected. So I'm just going to go back and fill that in. and putting in any features that I did not put in before. So there's also a sense of light, so we know where the light's coming from. And just working on the sky again, this dramatic sky is a very dramatic painting, meant to be. And just blending in the background. And again, using a softer brush to kind of blend things in. I find sable brushes very good for this. They are a little expensive, but they're beautiful for blending at the very end. And there we have it, our finished copy of Washington Crossing the Delaware. Well, that was very fun to do. I hope you enjoyed that video from Bassman Studio. Remember, if you have not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe. I'm close, fairly close to getting to my 1,000th subscriber, halfway there actually. So please help me get to my 1,000th subscriber and subscribe to my channel to see more videos coming soon from Bassman Studio. If you have subscribed, thank you so much for supporting this channel. Remember, any questions or comments that you may have regarding any video, not just this video, but any video on my YouTube channel, please let me know. Any ideas for videos I have not done yet, please let me know as well, as I'll consider it, as I have done in the past for new videos. So remember, go out there, do amazing work. Don't let fear stop you from being creative. And I'll see you next time on Bassman Studio. Have a great and amazing day.